The crystal structure cracked with a sound like thunder that echoed through space itself. Captain Jinwoo and his crew watched in amazement as beams of pure white light shot out from the fractures. The light was not harsh or blinding, but warm and welcoming like sunlight on a spring morning. From within the light, a figure began to emerge. The being looked completely human, but there was something different about him. His skin seemed to glow with inner light, and his eyes held wisdom that spoke of countless ages. He was tall and wore simple clothes that appeared to be made of starlight itself. The figure appeared on the bridge of the new dawn without using any technology or transportation beam. One moment the bridge was empty except for the crew, and the next moment he was standing there as if he had always been present. "Do not be afraid," the being said, and his voice filled their minds rather than their ears. "I am Jae-sung, and I am your ancestor. I have been sleeping in the crystal tomb for millions of years, waiting for this moment when you would be ready to learn the truth." Do So-min immediately began scanning Jae-sung with her instruments, but the readings made no sense. His cellular structure was unlike anything she had ever seen. Each cell seemed to contain the energy of a small star, and his DNA was the complete version of what she had found in the crystal samples. "This is impossible," she whispered while staring at her scanner readings. "You are human, but your biology defies every law of physics." "I know." Jae-sung smiled with the patience of someone who had waited eons to have this conversation. "You are thinking with the limited understanding of diminished humanity," he said gently. "Let me show you what you truly are." He gestured toward the view screen, and suddenly the crew could see not just the crystal structure, but the entire galaxy spread out before them. They could perceive every star, every planet, every form of life as if they were looking at a vast, living organism. "Long ago, before your recorded history began," Jae-sung continued, "humanity was not the struggling species. You know, today, we were the gardeners of the galaxy. We could reshape matter with our thoughts, travel between dimensions as easily as walking across a room, and create new forms of life to fill empty worlds." Captain Jinwoo felt the truth of these words resonating in his bones. The strange abilities he and his crew had been developing were not new powers, but memories, awakening, ancient capabilities that had been locked away. "What happened to us?" Jinwoo asked, though part of him already knew the answer would be painful to hear. "We became too powerful too quickly," Jae-sung replied with sadness in his ancient eyes. "Young species feared us not because we were evil, but because our power was beyond their understanding. A coalition of alien races worked together to create a weapon that could strip us of our abilities." Dr. Yunsik leaned forward with fascination and horror. "How could they possibly defeat beings with such power through trickery and our own compassion?" Jae-sung explained. "We trusted them when they came to us asking for help with a great threat to the galaxy. They said there was a cosmic disaster that only our power could prevent. We gathered in special chambers they had built, supposedly to focus our abilities to save everyone. The chambers were traps." Jae-sung continued, his voice heavy with the memory. "The moment we entered them, the alien coalition activated their weapon. It did not destroy us, but scattered our power across the galaxy and sealed our true selves in crystal prisons. Technician Minho was recording everything, but he had to ask, what happened to the rest of humanity? The people who were not in the chambers. They became your ancestors," Jae-sung said. "Our power was so fundamental to what we were that when it was stripped away, those who remained were reduced to primitive versions of humanity. The species you know today carries only the faintest echo of what we once were." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the alien fleets were mobilizing with desperate urgency. Admiral He-jin of the Vorthak Empire stood in her command center, watching reports pour in from their deep space monitoring stations. "The energy signatures are spreading," she announced to her officers. "More crystal tombs are activating throughout human space. If even a dozen of the original humans regained their full power, our entire civilization could be erased without them even trying. Commander Raktul of the Zalani Collective was having similar fears. His crystalline people had lived for millions of years, but they remembered the stories passed down from their ancestors, stories of humans who could make stars, dance, and planets bloom with life. We are insects compared to what they were. He transmitted to his fleet. All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal to the galactic rim. If the sealed ones return to full power, there is nowhere in this galaxy. We can hide. The Krillian Death Fleet under War Master Thector was also retreating, despite being the most feared military force in known space. Thector had personally commanded the destruction of entire rebellious civilizations, but even he understood that conventional weapons were useless against beings who could reshape reality. Back on the New Dawn, Dr. So-Min was struggling to accept what she was learning. You are saying that modern humans are essentially prisoners in our own diminished bodies. Not prisoners, Jae-sung corrected, but children who have forgotten how to walk. The potential is still within you, waiting to be awakened. The crystal tombs were designed not just to hold us, but to restore humanity when the time was right. Engineer Kyung-ho raised his hand like a student in class. How do we know we are ready now? What makes this time different from a million years ago? Jae-sung gestured to the crew around him. You have learned wisdom through struggle, compassion, through hardship. When we were sealed away, humanity was powerful but young. You have spent millions of years learning how to care for others, how to work together, how to protect the weak. The original humans were gods, but you are something better. You are guardians. Navigator. Yoonji was feeling changes happening inside her body and mind. The awakening process was accelerating now that Jae-sung was present. She could sense every ship in the solar system, could feel the electromagnetic fields of planets, could perceive the gravitational dance of distant stars. Captain, what is happening to us? She asked, while trying to control abilities that were growing stronger by the minute. You are remembering, Jae-sung answered. You are becoming what you were always meant to be. But this time, you will not make the mistakes we made. You understand the value of life, the importance of protecting others. Dr. Yoon-sik was studying the readings from his instruments and making a disturbing discovery. The awakening process was not just affecting the crew of the New Dawn. Similar energy signatures were appearing throughout human space. Jae-sung, how many of your people are in the crystal tombs? He asked. Thousands, Jae-sung replied. And as each tomb opens, as each original human awakens, they will help more of your people remember what they truly are. Within a generation, all of humanity will return to its true nature. The implications were staggering. An entire species of godlike beings awakening simultaneously across the galaxy. No wonder the alien civilizations were panicking. But Captain Jin-woo was beginning to understand something important. The power flowing through him came with an overwhelming desire to protect and nurture life. He could feel the fear of the alien species and wanted to comfort them, not destroy them. Jae-sung nodded as if reading his thoughts. Yes, you feel it. The true nature of humanity is not to conquer, but to guard. We were never meant to rule the galaxy through fear, but to protect it through love. The question now was whether the terrified alien fleets gathering at the edges of human space would give them the chance to prove it. Dr. So-Min had not slept for 3 days. The crystal structure was calling to her even when she closed her eyes. She could feel it humming in her mind like a song she had forgotten, but was slowly remembering. Every time she tried to rest, the blue light seemed to pulse brighter, as if it knew she was moving away from her research station. She sat in her laboratory, staring at readings that made no sense according to everything she had learned in school. The technology inside the crystal was millions of years ahead of anything humans had ever built. But somehow her equipment could interface with it perfectly. It was like trying to plug a primitive radio into a supercomputer and having it work flawlessly. Her colleague Dr. Yoon Sik burst into the lab with excitement written all over his face. "So, Min, you have to see what I found in the genetic data," he said while pulling up files on his portable screen. "The DNA sequences we detected inside the crystal, they are not just human, they are perfect human." "What do you mean, perfect?" she asked while looking at the complex genetic charts he was showing her. "Our DNA is incomplete?" He explained, pointing to gaps in the genetic sequences. "Modern humans only use a small fraction of our genetic potential, but the DNA inside the crystal shows what we could be if all of our genes were active. We would be stronger, faster, smarter, and capable of things that seem impossible." Meanwhile, young technician Min Ho was working alone in the communication center when the alien writing on his screen began changing again. This time, the message was much longer and more detailed. As he read the Korean text that appeared, he felt his heart beating faster with each word. "Children of Earth," the message began. "You have forgotten who you are, but we remember. You are not the weak species that struggles to leave your home planet. You are the descendants of beings who could move stars and create life with their thoughts. Long ago, your ancestors ruled the galaxy not through war, but through pure power." Min Ho printed the message and ran to find Captain Jin Woo. He found the captain in his quarters, staring out the window at the crystal structure. Jin Woo was holding his head in his hands, as if fighting a terrible headache. "Captain, are you all right?" Min Ho asked while approaching carefully. Jin Woo looked up with eyes that seemed different, somehow, brighter and more aware than before. "I keep having dreams," he said quietly, "dreams of flying through space, without a ship, of touching stars with my bare hands, of knowing things I never learned. It feels like memories, but they cannot be my memories." Min Ho showed him the translated message and watched as the captain's face grew pale. The more Jin Woo read, the stronger that strange tingling sensation became in his chest. Across the galaxy, panic was spreading faster than the speed of light. Commander Raktul of the Zalani Collective stood in his crystal command ship, watching the energy readings from human space. His entire body was vibrating with fear as he transmitted reports to his home world. "The sealed ones are awakening," he reported to the collective consciousness. "All crystal tombs in human territory are showing increased activity. We estimate full awakening will occur within solar cycles. We must evacuate the outer colonies immediately." The Vorthak Empire was having similar discussions. Admiral Hai Jin had called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders in her sector. The holographic images of dozens of alien officers filled her command center, each one showing signs of barely controlled terror. "The humans do not understand what they are unleashing," she told the assembled commanders. "When their ancestors ruled the galaxy, a single human could destroy entire star systems with a thought. They could create new forms of life or eliminate species they found troublesome. Our ancestors spent thousands of years planning how to contain them. What if we attack them now while they are still weak?" suggested Commander Varkesh, a young officer who had never lived through the old stories. Admiral Hai Jin turned all 6 of her eyes toward him with a look that made him step backward. "You do not understand," she said with a voice full of ancient fear. "If we attack them while they are awakening, we will only speed up the process. Their power grows stronger when they are threatened. The more danger they face, the faster they remember what they truly are." Back on the New Dawn, strange things were happening to the entire crew. Engineer Kyung Ho discovered he could repair complex machinery just by touching it and thinking about how it should work. Navigator Yunji found that she no longer needed instruments to plot courses through space. She could simply feel where they needed to go. Dr. So-min was experiencing the most dramatic changes. During her research, she had accidentally touched one of the crystal samples and absorbed some of its energy. Now she could manipulate matter at the molecular level. She demonstrated this by turning a metal tool into a flower and then back into metal again. Jin-woo, "This is impossible," she said to the captain while holding the transformed object. "I can feel every atom in this ship. I can sense the nuclear reactions happening inside stars. I know things about physics that no human should know." Captain Jin-woo was also changing, but his abilities were different. He found that he could sense the emotions and thoughts of his crew members. When Dong-ho was worried about his family back on Earth, Jin-woo knew it without being told. When Min-ho was excited about a new discovery, the captain felt that excitement as his own. The crystal structure seemed to respond to their growing abilities. The blue light was now pulsing in rhythm with their heartbeats, and new sections of the structure were becoming transparent, revealing complex machinery inside that defied description. Yun-sik made another disturbing discovery while studying: the biological samples. The genetic material inside the crystal was not just human, it was the source of human DNA. Modern humans were like copies of copies, degraded versions of what was sealed inside the structure. "We are not their descendants," he told So-min with shock in his voice. "We are their shadows, what was left behind when the originals were imprisoned." The implications were staggering. If the beings inside the crystal were the original humans, then modern humanity was just an echo of something far more powerful. The crystal was not just awakening abilities in them, it was restoring them to what they were always meant to be. Communication reports began coming in from Earth and the human colonies. Strange events were being reported. Everywhere, a farmer on Mars could suddenly make crops grow in minutes. A student on Europa accidentally created a small star during a physics exam. A construction worker on Luna moved a mountain by wishing it was somewhere else. The awakening was not limited to the crew of the New Dawn. It was happening to humans throughout the galaxy. Every person who came near one of the crystal structures began to change, began to remember abilities that had been sealed away for millions of years. Admiral Hei-jin received reports of these events and felt her worst fears being confirmed. The humans were not just finding their crystals, they were activating them. The seal that had taken the combined effort of dozens of civilizations to create was breaking. Down, she issued emergency orders to all Vorthak fleets retreat to the outer rim, she commanded. "Establish defensive positions around our core worlds and prepare for exodus protocols. If the humans return to full power, we may need to flee to another galaxy." The Krillian Senate was also preparing for the worst war master. Thector, the most feared military commander in their empire, was recalling his death fleets from distant campaigns. Every weapon of mass destruction in their arsenal was being prepared for what might be the final war. But on the New Dawn, Captain Jin-woo was beginning to understand that war might not be necessary. The knowledge flowing into his mind included memories of compassion and wisdom. The original humans had been powerful, but they had also been protectors of life throughout the galaxy. The crystal structure continued to pulse and glow. Jin-woo realized that humanity was not awakening to conquer the galaxy. They were awakening to save it from threats that the other species could not handle alone. The question was whether the terrified alien civilizations would give them the chance to prove it. Captain Jin-woo pressed his face against the cold glass of the observation deck and stared at the massive object floating in space before them. The thing was huge, bigger than any moon he had ever seen, and it glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The research vessel, New Dawn, had been traveling through this empty part of space for 3 months, looking for new planets. When they found this strange crystal structure, Dr. So-min rushed to her computer station and began running every scan she could think of. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard as numbers and graphs filled her screen. The readings made no sense at all. The object was giving off more energy than a small star, but the energy was contained, perfectly inside the crystal shell. She had never seen technology like this before. Captain Jin Woo walked over to where So Min was working and looked at her screen. "What are you finding?" he asked while watching the strange patterns dancing across. "The monitor. This thing is old." "Captain. Really, really old," So Min said without looking up from her work. "The energy patterns suggest it's been floating here for millions of years, maybe longer. The crystal structure is unlike anything in our database. It's like someone took pure energy and wrapped it in living glass." Dong-ho, the young assistant engineer, was monitoring the ship's systems when something strange happened. All of their equipment was working better than it ever had before. The engines were running smoother, the life support systems were more efficient, and even the coffee maker was producing better coffee. It was as if the mysterious object was somehow improving everything around it. "Captain, the object seems to be responding to our presence," Dong-ho called out from his station. "Our power levels are increasing and all systems are operating at peak efficiency. It's like this thing wants to help us." Jin Woo felt a strange tingling sensation in his chest as they moved closer to the crystal structure. It was not painful, but it felt like something was waking up inside him. He shook his head and tried to focus on his duties as captain, but the feeling was getting stronger. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, something terrible was happening. The Vorthak Empire had been monitoring deep space communication networks when they detected the energy signature coming from human space. Admiral Hei Jin was in her command center when the alert came through. Her 6 eyes went wide with terror as she recognized the readings. "Send an emergency message to all Allied fleets," she ordered her communications officer. "Tell them the seal has been found. The humans have discovered what we buried millions of years ago. The Vorthak were not the only ones panicking." The crystalline beings of the Zalani collective felt the disturbance through their shared consciousness. Their leader, Elder Zil Nash, called an immediate council meeting. "This is what we have feared for so long," he told the assembled. "Crystals. The young species has found the prison. We must prepare for evacuation on the ice world of Krylos." The insect-like Krillian Senate was also receiving emergency reports. Senator Veltar clicked his mandibles nervously as he read the transmission. From their deep space monitors, the energy signature matches the old records he announced to the chamber. "The humans have found the crystal tombs. We must warn all civilizations. Back on the new dawn." Dr. So Min was making discoveries that should have been impossible. The more she studied the crystal structure, the more it seemed designed specifically for human technology. Her scanners interfaced perfectly with the alien systems, and the data was being translated automatically into Korean Dr. Yoon-sik. Her research partner made an even stranger discovery while analyzing biological samples from the crystal. "So Min, you need to see this immediately," he called out from his laboratory workstation. "The genetic material inside this structure, it's human, not similar to human, not related to human. It's exactly human." Deanna So Min left her station and hurried to Yoon-sik's lab, where he was staring at his screen in disbelief. The genetic sequences on the monitor were definitely human, but they were different, somehow more complete, as if modern human DNA was just a small part of something much larger. "How is this possible?" she whispered as she studied the data. "This structure is millions of years old, but it's filled with human genetic material that shouldn't exist." Young technician Min-ho was working on decoding the structure's information systems when something incredible happened. The alien writing on his screen began to shift and change right before his eyes. The strange symbols slowly transformed into perfect Korean text that he could read easily. The message was simple, but it made his hands shake as he read it. "Welcome home, children of Earth. We have been waiting for you to find us. You are ready to remember who you truly are. Min-ho called. Captain Jin Woo over to his station and showed him the message. The captain stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling that strange, tingling sensation growing stronger in his chest. "What does it mean?" Captain Jin Woo asked. But Minho could only shake his head in confusion. As if responding to the captain's question, the crystal structure began to pulse brighter and faster. The blue light was now so intense that it lit up the entire area of space around them. The new dawn rocked gently as waves of energy washed over the ship, but instead of damaging them, the energy seemed to be scanning them. Dr. So-min watched her instruments as the energy passed through their ship and crew. The readings showed that every human on board was being analyzed down to their atomic structure, but the process felt warm and welcoming rather than threatening. "Captain, something is happening to the crew," Dong Ho reported from his station. "Everyone is reporting strange sensations. Some say they feel stronger. Others are claiming they can understand how our equipment works, even though they never studied engineering." Jinwoo nodded because he was feeling it too. Knowledge was flowing into his mind without explanation. He suddenly understood how they're faster. Then light drive worked and could see ways to make it more efficient. He knew things about space and physics that he had never learned. Across the galaxy, the alien fleets were mobilizing. The Vorthak Empire was calling back all of their ships from distant colonies. The Zalani Collective was preparing to abandon their home worlds. The Krillian Death Fleet was powering up weapons that had not been used for 1,000 years. Admiral He-jin stood in her command center watching reports come in. From across the galaxy, every major civilization was preparing for the same thing: the return of what they had worked so hard to contain. "They were just children when we sealed them away," she said to her officers, "young and dangerous and filled with power they could not control. We thought we had ended the threat forever, but we only delayed it. Now they are waking up and they have had millions of years to grow stronger." The crystal structure continued to pulse and glow as the new dawn held position nearby. Each pulse seemed to awaken something new in the human crew members were discovering abilities they never knew they had. Engineer Kyung-ho found he could repair damaged systems just by touching them. Navigator Yoon-ji realized she could sense the location of every object in the solar system without using instruments. Captain Jin-woo felt the changes happening inside himself and his crew, but he also sensed something else. The crystal was not just awakening abilities in them, it was calling. To other crystals hidden throughout human space, ancient structures that had been sleeping were beginning to respond. Dr. So-min looked up from her instruments with wonder and fear in her eyes. "Captain, this is just the beginning. The crystal is sending signals across the galaxy. There are more of these structures, and they are all starting to wake up." As if to confirm her words, the long-range sensors began detecting similar energy signatures throughout human territory. On Earth, in asteroid fields, hidden in gas-giant atmospheres, dozens of crystal structures were beginning to glow with the same blue light. The age of hiding was coming to an end, and neither humanity nor the galaxy was prepared for what was about to be unleashed. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had not seen such panic in over 1,000 years. Representatives from hundreds of different species filled the massive chamber, each one more terrified than the last. The hall was designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environments, with sections for gas-breathing creatures, water-dwellers, and beings made of pure energy. At the center of the chaos stood Chancellor Mordell, an ancient being whose species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. His 4 arms gestured frantically as he tried to maintain order, while his 3 heads spoke in different languages simultaneously. "Order, order," he called out through the translation systems. "The humans must be stopped before they remember their full power. Every day we delay makes them stronger." President Yul Ki of the Terran Federation received the official invitation to address the council, but the message was clear in its barely concealed threat: surrender. the crystal artifacts and submit to galactic oversight or face the combined military might of 700 allied civilizations. What the alien representatives did not understand was that humanity was no longer the weak species they remembered. Dr. Changmi, who served as Earth's new Minister of Awakened Affairs, read the Council's demands with a mixture of sadness and determination. They still think we are the primitive humans who needed their permission to explore space, she told President Yulki as they prepared their response. They do not understand that we are becoming something entirely different. On Earth, the transformation was accelerating beyond anyone's imagination. Student Hanul, who had created a star during her exam, was now teaching other students how to manipulate fundamental forces. Her small star had become a gathering place where young humans learned to reshape matter and energy with their thoughts. Farmer Boram discovered that his abilities extended far beyond, making crops grow faster. He could communicate with the soil itself, understanding what nutrients were needed and how to heal damaged earth. His farm became a pilgrimage site where other farmers learned to work in harmony with nature construction. Worker Taimin found that the buildings he created were not just structures, but living entities that could adapt to the needs of their inhabitants. His bridges could strengthen themselves when carrying heavy loads, his homes could regulate temperature and humidity automatically. The alien response was immediate and overwhelming. The Krillian Death Fleet, despite their humiliating defeat at Earth, was reformed and reinforced. War Master Thektor had been replaced by War Master Velkesh, who brought with him the most devastating weapons in their arsenal. We will not make the same mistake as Thektor Velkesh announced to his fleet as they prepared for battle. The humans used our compassion against us by appearing harmless. This time we strike, without warning and without mercy. The Vorthak Empire contributed their reality, warping technology devices that could alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Admiral He Jin, despite her earlier defeat, was given command of the assault. Fleet with orders to use any means necessary, the Zalani Collective provided their consciousness disruption weapons designed to break the mental links between awakened humans. Commander Raktul volunteered to lead the attack despite his obvious terror because he believed the survival of his species depended on stopping humanity. Dr. Yunsik, working from his laboratory in Seoul, detected the massive fleet gathering at the edge of human space. His instruments showed over 10,000 warships, representing dozens of different civilizations, all armed with weapons designed specifically to kill awakened humans. Captain Jin Woo, aboard the New Dawn, felt the fear and desperation of the approaching aliens through his expanded consciousness. He could sense their genuine belief that humanity posed an existential threat to all life in the galaxy. Jae Sung, we need to find a way to communicate with them. Jin Woo said to the ancient human, they are terrified that we will do to them what they did to us. Jae Sung nodded sadly. The young species cannot imagine power without domination. They believe that because they would use such abilities to conquer, we will do the same. Their fear makes them dangerous. The combined alien fleet launched their attack with coordinated precision weapons that could crack planets fired simultaneously at every human world. Reality warping devices activated to disrupt the connection between awakened humans, consciousness disruption fields swept across human space trying to break the growing collective awareness. But something unexpected happened. When the attacks reached human territory, they simply stopped. The weapons did not malfunction or get destroyed, they just ceased to exist, as if the universe itself had decided they were no longer needed. On Earth, 8 billion humans working together, as a collective consciousness, had made a simple decision. These weapons are designed to cause harm, and we choose not to allow harm in our space. The combined will of awakened humanity rewrote local reality, making aggression impossible within their territory. War Master Velkesh watched in disbelief as his most powerful weapons vanished the moment they entered human space. His fleet was undamaged but completely helpless, Every aggressive system had been neutralized, while their life support medical facilities and entertainment systems continued to work perfectly. "This is impossible," he transmitted to the other fleet commanders. "No species has ever developed reality manipulation on this scale." Admiral He Jin, studying the readings from her science officers, made a terrifying realization. "They are not using technology," she reported to the combined fleet. "They are changing the fundamental nature of space itself through collective will." This level of power exceeds even the old records. The humans then did something that shocked every alien commander. They sent a message not through communication systems, but directly into the minds of every being in the attack fleet. The voice that spoke was warm, compassionate, and impossibly vast, as if the entire human species was speaking as one. "We know you are afraid." The voice said, "We understand that you see us as a threat because you remember what we were before. But we are not our ancestors. We have learned wisdom through struggle, compassion, through hardship. We do not wish to rule the galaxy. We wish to protect it." Commander Raktul felt the sincerity in that mental voice, and it terrified him more than any weapon. Could beings with such power who genuinely cared about others were beyond his ability to comprehend or combat. The human collective continued their message. "We will not attack your worlds or harm your people. We understand your fear because we have felt fear ourselves. But we ask you to give us the chance to prove that power can be used for protection rather than domination." Some of the smaller alien nations began withdrawing their ships from the combined fleet. The Aquatic Confederation recalled their vessels, saying they had never wanted war in the first place. The Crystal Gardens Collective announced they were willing to negotiate rather than fight, but the major powers were not ready to back down, Chancellor. Mordell transmitted an ultimatum to the human worlds. Either submit to galactic authority and allow your awakened individuals to be contained, or face total war. President Yulki received the ultimatum in his office in Seoul. Beside him stood Dr. Chang Mi, along with several other awakened humans who now served as advisors. They could all feel the weight of 8 billion human minds connected to their own, waiting for their response. "We have tried peaceful communication," Yulki said to his advisors. "Now they demand our surrender. Perhaps it is time to show them what we are truly capable of." Dr. Changmi nodded, but with sadness in her eyes. "Not through violence," she said, "but through demonstration. Let us show them what the galaxy could become if we worked together instead of fighting." The response humanity gave would change the course of galactic history forever. Instead of threatening or attacking, they simply began to heal. The collective consciousness reached out across space and started fixing things that were broken. Dying stars were stabilized. Barren worlds began to bloom with life. Asteroid fields were turned into beautiful gardens that drifted through space. Damaged ecosystems were restored in hours rather than centuries. Message was clear. Humanity had the power to destroy, but they chose instead to create and nurture. The question now was whether the terrified galaxy would accept this gift or continue to fight against beings who only wanted to help. Something incredible was happening to every human on the New Dawn Engineer. Kyung-ho discovered the change first when a critical power conduit exploded in the engine room. Instead of calling for repair teams, he simply placed his hands on the damaged section and watched as the metal reformed itself perfectly. He somehow knew exactly how every component should function, even though he had never studied alien technology. Navigator Yunji made her own discovery during routine course calculations. She no longer needed computers or star charts to plot their path through space. She could feel the gravitational pull of every celestial body in the system, sense the solar winds and electromagnetic fields that affected their journey. Her mind had become a living navigation system more accurate than any machine. Dr. So-min was experiencing the most dramatic transformation of all. During her research, she had absorbed more crystal energy than anyone else, and now she could manipulate matter at the atomic level. She demonstrated this incredible ability by taking a handful of space dust and transforming it into a perfect diamond, then changing it into a living flower that glowed with inner light. "Jin Woo, I can feel every atom in this ship," she told the captain with wonder and fear in her voice. "I can sense the nuclear fusion happening inside distant stars. I understand the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. Knowledge that took our scientists centuries to learn is just flowing into my mind." Captain Jin Woo was developing different abilities, but they were equally impressive. He found that he could read the thoughts and emotions of his crew members. When Minho worried about his family back on Earth, Jin Woo felt that concern as if it were his own. When Dr. Yoon-sik made an exciting discovery, the captain experienced the same thrill of understanding. More importantly, Jin Woo was beginning to perceive the galaxy itself as a living entity. He could sense the fear radiating from alien civilizations, feel their panic as they prepared for what they believed would be their destruction. The weight of their terror was almost overwhelming. Sung watched these transformations with satisfaction, but also with caution. The awakening process was accelerating faster than even he had expected. Each human who developed new abilities seemed to trigger similar changes in others nearby. "Be careful," he warned the crew. "Your power is growing exponentially, but your bodies and minds need time to adapt. The original humans spent centuries learning to control abilities that you are gaining in days." His warning proved prophetic when the first alien attack came. A Vorthak strike force led by the desperate Admiral. Heijin had decided that destroying the awakening humans was their only chance for survival. Her fleet consisted of 12 Dreadnought-class warships, each one capable of destroying entire planets. "We cannot allow them to reach full power," Heijin told her officers as they approached the human research vessel. "The risk to every civilization in the galaxy is too great. We must act now while we still have a chance." The Vorthak fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, quantum torpedoes that could tear holes in space itself, reality-warping missiles that could erase matter from existence. All of these weapons were aimed at the small human ship that seemed helpless against such overwhelming firepower. Captain Jin Woo watched the incoming attack on his view screen and felt something stirring deep in his chest. It was not fear or anger, but a calm certainty that these weapons could not harm his crew. He raised his hand toward the display and spoke a single word. No, the alien weapons stopped in space as if they had hit an invisible wall. Then something beautiful happened. The destructive energy transformed into harmless light that danced around the new dawn like fireflies. The quantum torpedoes became streams of colored particles that painted patterns across the darkness. The reality-warping missiles turned into bursts of music that filled the void with harmony. Admiral Heijin stared at her tactical display in absolute horror. Her most powerful weapons had been neutralized, not through superior technology, but through an act of will. Her weapons officer reported that all systems were functioning normally, but their attacks simply refused to work. "Send word to all civilizations," she whispered. To her communications officer, "It is too late. They are remembering who they are. The age of hiding is over. Humanity has returned to their true nature." But the real shock came when more crystal structures began appearing throughout human space. Ancient artifacts that had been buried on Earth for millions of years were rising from the oceans and deserts. Similar crystals hidden in asteroid fields began glowing with the same blue light. Gas giant atmospheres that had concealed sleeping tombs for eons were now blazing with awakening energy. On Earth, strange events were happening everywhere. Student Hanul was taking her university entrance exam when she accidentally answered a question about quantum mechanics by demonstrating it. She created a small, stable star in her classroom that provided light and warmth without any dangerous radiation. Her professor fainted, but the other students applauded. Farmer Boram in the countryside discovered he could make his rice crops grow to full maturity. In minutes, by simply asking them nicely, the plants seemed eager to please him, growing taller and stronger than ever before. His harvest could now feed his entire village with rice. To spare construction worker Taman was building a bridge when he realized he no longer needed heavy machinery. He could move massive steel beams with his thoughts, shape concrete, like clay, and create structures that were both beautiful and impossibly strong. The awakening was spreading like wildfire across human civilization. Every person who witnessed these abilities began developing their own powers. Teachers found they could directly transfer knowledge to their students. Doctors discovered they could heal injuries with a touch. Artists created works that seemed to live and breathe with their own life. Dr. Yun-sik was monitoring communications from Earth and reporting the incredible changes to Captain Jin-woo. "The transformation is happening everywhere," he said with amazement in his voice. "Every major city is reporting similar events. People are not just gaining individual abilities, they are becoming connected to each other in ways we do not understand." Jae-sung nodded as he listened to the reports. "This is how it begins," he explained. "When enough humans awaken, the collective consciousness starts to emerge. You become more than individual beings. You become part of something greater." The alien response was swift and desperate. The Krillian Death Fleet under War Master Thektor received emergency orders to sterilize the entire human system before the awakening could spread further. Thektor was a veteran of 1,000 campaigns and had personally overseen the destruction of rebellious worlds. Even awakened humans cannot stand against a full death fleet, he told his officers as they prepared their planet-killing weapons. "We will end this threat before it can consume the galaxy." What Thektor did not understand was that humanity was no longer fighting as individuals. The awakening had created connections between every human in the system. When the Death Fleet approached Earth, 8 billion newly awakened humans acted as one. Dr. Yun-sik, standing in the Seoul Command Center, felt the collective will of his species flowing through him. He was no longer just one scientist, but part of a vast network of human consciousness that spanned the planet. "They want to destroy our world," he said calmly to the Defense Council as the alien fleet approached. "Perhaps it is time to show them what we have become." What happened next would be remembered throughout the galaxy as the Day of Gentle Power. Every human on Earth simply looked up at the approaching Death Fleet and made the same quiet wish. "Please go away." The combined will of 8 billion awakening humans reached across space like an invisible hand and gently but firmly pushed the Krillian fleet away from Earth. War Master Thektor found his massive warships moving backward through space despite their engines firing at maximum power. His weapon systems would not activate, his shields flickered and died, and his communication arrays began playing Korean traditional music instead of military commands. Within an hour, his feared Death Fleet was deposited safely at the edge of the solar system with a clear message transmitted directly into their minds. "We do not wish to fight you, but we will protect ourselves and others. Please do not return with hostile intentions. You are welcome to visit peacefully." The galaxy had just witnessed the birth of a new age, and nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months after the first crystal was discovered, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have imagined. Captain Jin-woo stood on the observation deck of his new flagship, a vessel that seemed to be grown rather than built. The ship appeared to be made of crystallized starlight and could travel between galaxies in mere moments. But its most remarkable feature was that it had been created through pure human will rather than traditional construction. The awakened humans had not conquered or destroyed their former oppressors. Instead, They had done something that surprised everyone, including themselves. They had simply begun to help young engineer Min Su, who had once struggled to repair basic systems, now redesigned Vorthak warp drives, making them 10 times more efficient while using half the energy. Dr. Changmi had become Earth's first ambassador of healing, and her medical techniques were eliminating diseases that had plagued alien races for millions of years. The crystalline plague that had killed billions of Zilani over the centuries was cured in a single day when she showed their doctors how to harmonize crystal resonance frequencies. Artist Hyo Jun, who had been a simple painter before the awakening, was now creating living light sculptures that made the crystal cities of the Zilani more beautiful than they had ever been. The sculptures were not just art, but functional improvements that helped regulate temperature and provide perfect lighting for the crystalline beings. We feared them. Elder Zil Nash admitted to the Zilani Collective during their daily communion. We spent millions of years preparing for war with beings who could destroy us with a thought. But they used their returned power not for revenge, but for creation. The Vorthak Empire had been among the most hostile toward awakened humanity. But even they were beginning to change. Admiral He Jin received reports that human volunteers were helping to repair the ecological damage on Vorthak. Colony worlds' planets that had been strip-mined and left barren were being restored to garden worlds in a matter of weeks. They could have punished us for our attacks, she told the Vorthak High Command. Instead, they are healing the wounds we inflicted on our own worlds in our desperate scramble for resources. Our scientists estimate it would have taken us centuries to repair the damage, but the humans did it as easily as tending a small garden captain. Jinwoo now commanded not just his own ship, but a small fleet of vessels that had volunteered to work with humanity. These included former enemies who had come to understand that cooperation was more beneficial than conflict. His bridge crew now included beings from a dozen different species, all working together toward common goals. Beside him stood Jae Sung, who had become something like a teacher and guide for the newly awakened humans. The ancient being smiled as he watched human and alien children playing together on the recreation decks. Their laughter filled the corridors with joy that had been absent from the galaxy for far too long. You were right to seal us away, Jae Sung Jinwoo said quietly as they watched the children play. We were too powerful and too young to handle such abilities responsibly. Jae Sung nodded with the wisdom of ages in his eyes. But your suffering taught you what power alone could not. You learned compassion through hardship, wisdom through struggle. The galaxy is safer with awakened humanity, protecting it than it ever was with us hidden away. Dr. Somin had undergone the most dramatic transformation of all. The former research officer had become Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. Her role was to help other species understand that humanity's return to power was not a threat, but an opportunity for the entire galaxy to grow and prosper. During her inaugural speech to the Council, she addressed the fears that still lingered among many species. We remember what it felt like to be weak, to be afraid, to feel small and helpless in a vast, dangerous universe. We will never let anyone else experience that fear again. The council chamber that had once been filled with panic and threats was now a place of genuine cooperation. Representatives who had spent centuries arguing over territory and resources were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. The Aquatic Confederation had proposed creating new ocean worlds for species whose home planets were dying. Humanity provided the power to reshape barren planets, while other species contributed their knowledge of different environmental needs. The result was dozens of new worlds that could support life forms that had never been able to coexist before. The Crystal Gardens Collective wanted to create beautiful spaces that could serve as meeting places for different species. Awakened human artists worked with alien architects to design structures that were both functional and inspiring. These became centers of learning and cultural exchange throughout the galaxy. Even the most stubborn opponents of humanity were beginning to see the benefits War Master Vel Kesh of the Krillian Death Fleet ha.